Welcome back to the Jeep Jamboree video series. We're at the Southern California location of Rebel Off-Road. Tires are where the rubber meets the road, but in our case, the dirt. Having a proper off-road tire can make or break your off-road experience. Today we're going to cover how to choose the right tire, all-terrain versus mud terrain, how to choose the proper tire size, airing down, and bead locks. To discuss these topics, we brought in Nestor Cabrera with Falken Tires. Welcome, Nestor.
Hey, thanks, Pierce. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We want to talk about tires. They're really important. You know, one of the things you really want to focus on is you don't want to have a bald tire like this up here. You want to have a tire with some tread on it, which is really important. So one of the number one questions we get at the office are the difference between these tires. We have an all-terrain and a mud terrain. Explain a little bit about that.
Well, you know, typically when somebody looks up to upgrading their Jeep, a couple of the first things they look at is, you know, what they're going to do to their Jeep, what kind of suspension, what kind of modifications. Tires is one of those modifications. When you buy a standard Jeep off the showroom floor, it tends to come with a highway tread tire. And so the first step is finding the right tire for your vehicle. An all-terrain tire is actually a step above what the highway terrain tire that comes in a Jeep is. It has a little bit more aggressive tread design, but it has characteristics that are worthy of both off-road and on-road use. When we go to a mud terrain tire, it is a much more aggressive tire, and its primary purpose is more for off-road use. It provides the maximum amount of traction that you can get on a tire, but it's also more aggressive, and it has some shortcomings, i.e. the wear on the tire tends to be a lot faster, tends to be a lot noisier, but it is also a lot more aggressive looking. So you got to basically find the right tire to meet your needs.
So you have two tires really here that would be good for off-roaders out there. And you pointed out something to me earlier that MT doesn't necessarily mean mud terrain. A lot of people think that. I thought that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Well, I mean, you know, when they designed these type of tires, they were originally designed to go in the mud. But nowadays, you know, in areas like Southern California where there is no mud, you know, you use these tires for desert, you use these tires for rock crawling, and so they actually provide the maximum amount of traction. So it's a max traction type tire. Okay,
max traction, okay. Now, when somebody's selecting a tire to go off-road, we get a lot of questions about tire sizes. How does somebody go about sizing a tire that's right for them? I know we have this vehicle behind us. This has a huge tire on it. You just can't put this tire on a normal stock Jeep, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, that's one thing that the consumer really has to look at is what they've done to their Jeep, the modifications that they plan on doing or have done. They want to complement the right size tire for what the vehicle is going to be used for. You know, if it's going to be a off-highway used only type of vehicle, a trail vehicle, you know, you're probably going to want a really large size tire that's going to complement the performance modifications you've done. If you have a Jeep that is not so quite as built and it's got the modifications for more of a highway and, you know, occasional recreational use, then you want a tire that's going to be a little bit smaller, that's going to be giving you the good gas mileage. I mean, when you go to a tire this big, you know, there's a lot of mass that you have to spin, so there's a lot of you know, there's some shortcomings for that. You
know, a lot more energy gets used in that.
A lot more fuel that you consume. So the consumer really has to look at what they're going to be doing and how they're going to be using their vehicle. If you're going to be driving this car 90% of the time from your house to work, then you obviously have to go with a much smaller tire that's going to give you the performance you're looking off-road, but it's also going to give you the performance you're looking on-road.
Sure. Now, we also have the question at the office, a lot comes in through our emails and phone calls into our office about airing down. I know it's a question everybody has about this, but how to air down to the proper pressure. And I know that varies. It's a tough question because there's such a broad spectrum of opinion on this, but at the end of the day, you know, the reason why you'd want to air down also is you have a contact patch on the road. And the contact patch is the small surface that actually touches the tire, that actually touches the pavement. And when you lower your tire pressure, you decrease the tire pressure, that contact patch increases. And it does two things. It decreases your PSI on the surface. So if you're in sand, for instance, you wouldn't sink in sand, you'd actually float on top of it, but it would also give you extra traction, right? And that would be a significant amount of area if you were to air down. So are there pointers on airing down to a certain PSI?
Well, you know, what we recommend is that you consult an expert on this. Obviously, with Jeep Jamboree, there are trail guides that are actually very familiar with the terrains that they're going to be guiding you through. So you want to ask your trail guide, hey, what pressure is good for this trail that I'm on? You know, in some instances, they're going to actually tell you air down so many PSI, and it's more for comfort than it is for performance, because some of the trails are not as demanding. If you go on a trail that is very demanding, that requires more grip on the tire, they're going to say, okay, you're going to air down this much. And I mean, you know, that's going to be so that, one, the vehicle can perform. Obviously, as the air comes down, the contact area increases, but it also allows the tire to conform to the terrain that you're going to be in, so it gives you more traction. It allows for more biting edge on the rocks or on the trail. It's better performance. But the experts are the trail guides, and you really need to talk to them and take their input, because they know the terrain that you're going to be on, they know the trail, and they have the experience that's going to allow you to get through those obstacles without any problems.
Sure, and obviously the trail guides will at Jamborees will be able to, you know, focus on that, give you the proper air down, you know, inflation kind of PSI for those tires for the different terrain. I know in Rubicon before we run sometimes a high PSI, and you're right, it does add to the comfort as well for that. Also important when you're airing down, remember to air back up. It's very important you hit the pavement again to put the proper PSI in your tire again before you hit the road. You can have a sloshy feeling with the vehicle when you do that. And the last question we really notice, or we have questions on, I think there's just confusion on the market, is bead locks. I know that we have bead locks on this tire behind me here, you have bead locks on this tire over here. A lot of people getting into the sport kind of ask us the question, do I need bead locks? Is that something they need?
Well, one thing people really need to know is bead locks are not highway certified. They are for off-highway use only. So if you have a vehicle that you are going to be driving primarily on the road, don't put on bead locks. Bead locks are really designed for competition, and they're designed to be ran with extremely low tire pressures. And so what happens is there's a lot of maintenance and care that's required on the bead lock. You have to make sure that every single bolt is properly torqued down. You know, one thing that people don't realize is that over time, air actually escapes the tire. So you always have to check your tire pressures. And that's something that really is important when you're running a bead lock, is that you have to make sure you always have the adequate tire pressure in the tire. That's usually the number one cause of tire failure, is the fact that you don't run the right pressure. And that goes for passenger cars, it goes for trucks, it goes for Jeeps. And if you run a tire at too low of a tire pressure, the tire will run really hot, and it can start to give you problems, you know, flats, and you don't want to be stuck on the side of the road going to a Jeep Jamboree and miss your trail time. You know?
Definitely don't want that. Well, thanks for helping us kind of put some knowledge to these questions that a lot of people have. I appreciate you coming by today.
No, thanks for having me.
I want to thank Nestor Cabrera with Falken Tire for coming out this afternoon. To learn more information about tires, tire sizes, and the proper PSI to air down to, you can visit falkentire.com.